October 27th, 1903, Volume 5. The divine way of operating is only love for the Father and for men. As I was in my usual state, I saw my adorable Jesus for just a little, saying to me, "My daughter, to accept mortifications and sufferings as penance and as chastisement is praiseworthy. It is good, but it has no connection with the divine way of operating. In fact, I did much. I suffered much. But the way I had in all this was only love for the Father and for men. So it shows immediately whether a creature has the way of operating and suffering in a divine manner, if it is love alone that pushes her to do it and to suffer. If she has other ways, good as they may be, they are always the ways of creatures, and therefore she will find in them the merit that a creature can acquire, but not the merit that the Creator can acquire, because there is no union of ways. But if she has my way, the fire of love will destroy any disparity and inequality, and will form one single thing between my work and that of the creature." October 27th, 1904, Volume 6. Luisa remains without suffering to form a little void for justice, so that it may chastise the people. While in my usual state, I was very agitated, not only because of the most total privation of my only and sole good, but also because, finding myself outside of myself, I saw how people were going to kill one another, like many dogs, as if Italy was going to be involved in a war with other nations. I saw many soldiers departing, crowds upon crowds, and as those would be claimed victims, yet more would be called. Who can say how oppressed I felt, more so since I felt almost without sufferings? So I lamented, saying to myself, "Why live? Jesus does not come. Suffering is lacking. My dearest and most inseparable companions, Jesus and suffering, have left me, and yet I live?" I thought that without both of them I would not be able to live, so inseparable were they from me, and yet I still live. Oh God, what a change! What a painful point! What an unspeakable torment! What an unheard of cruelty! You have left other souls without you, but never without suffering. To no one have you given this affront, so ignominious. Only for me alone was this slap prepared, so terrible. I alone deserved this chastisement, so unbearable. But just chastisement for my sins, or rather, I deserved something worse. At that moment he came like a flash, telling me imposingly, "What is the matter with you, speaking like this? My will is enough for you in everything. It would be a chastisement if I put you out of the divine sphere and I caused the food of my will to be lacking to you, which I want you to cherish and esteem above everything. Besides, it is necessary that you remain without suffering for some time, in order to form a little void for justice, so that it may chastise the people." October 27th, 1921, Volume 13. The divine will must be like the soul to the body. I was saying to my always lovable Jesus, "It has been a long time since you placed me inside of you. I would feel safer, and I could share more in your divinity, as if the earth did not belong to me, and heaven were my dwelling. How many tears did I not have to shed when your volition would put me out? The mere sensing the air of the earth was an unbearable weight for me. but your will would win, and I, bowing my forehead, would resign myself. Now I feel that you are always inside of me, and when I become delirious for seeing you, by just moving in my interior, or but putting out an arm, you calm me and give me life. Tell me, what is the reason? And Jesus, my daughter, it is fair, after I carried you in my interior for my whole life, that your duty be to carry me in your interior for all of your life. If I placed you in my interior, it was in order to perfume your soul, and to extend a new heaven within you, so as to render it a worthy residence for my person. It is true that you felt safer and that joys poured down upon you, but the earth is not a place of delights. Its inheritance is pain, and the cross is the bread of the strong. More so, since I had to establish the center of my will in you, and therefore it was necessary that my will lived in you and served you as the soul to the body. My will could never descend into a soul in a singular way and outside of the ordinary if she did not have her distinct prerogatives. The same with my mamma. I, eternal Word, could not have descended in her if she did not have her distinct prerogatives, and the divine breath had not breathed into her, as into a new creation, to the point of rendering her admirable to all, and superior to all created things. The same with you. First, my humanity wanted to have its stable dwelling in you, in order to prepare you, and now it is giving you the life of my will, like the soul to the body. You must know that my will must be like the soul to the body. See, this happens also with us, the three divine persons. Our love is great, infinite, and eternal. But if we did not have a will that animates and gives life to this love, our love would be without life, without works. Our wisdom seems incredible. Our power can crush everything in 1 minute, and in another minute it can redo everything. But if we did not have a will that wanted to manifest the mastery of our wisdom, as it manifested it in the creation, in which it ordered and harmonized everything, and with its power it made it fixed in such a way that it cannot move 1 bit, both wisdom and power would have had nothing to do, and so with all the rest of our attributes. Now, in the same way, I want my will to be like the soul to the body. The body without the soul is lifeless. Even though it contains all the senses, it cannot see, nor speak, hear, work. It is almost a useless thing, and maybe even unbearable. But if the body is animated, how many things can it not do? Yet, oh, how many render themselves useless and unbearable because they are not animated by my will. They are like those electric systems without light, like those machines without motion, covered with rust and dust, and almost impotent to motion. Ah, how pitiful they are! Each thing which is not animated by my will is a life of sanctity that is missing. This is why I want to be in you like the soul to the body, and my will make new surprises of creations. It will give new life to my love. It will do new works. It will manifest the mastery of my wisdom. It will give new motion to my power. Therefore, be attentive and let me do, so that I may accomplish my great design, that the creature be animated by my will. October 27th, 1922, Volume 14. The Divine Will, Inheritance of Jesus for the Creatures. The Two Generations. I was thinking to myself about all that has been written in these past days, and I thought to myself, How is it possible that my sweet Jesus has waited for so long to make known all that his humanity operated in the divine will for love of the creatures? But while I was thinking of this, my always lovable Jesus, making himself seen with his heart opened, told me, "Daughter of my will, why concern yourself? This happened also in creation. How long did I not keep it in my womb actually formed? And when I pleased, I delivered it. And even redemption, how long did I not keep it within me? I could say from eternity. Yet I waited much time before descending from heaven and bringing it to fulfillment. This is my usual way. First I fecundate my works, I form them within me, and at the appropriate time I deliver them. Even more, you must know that my humanity contained 2 generations within itself, the children of darkness and the children of light. I came to rescue the first ones, and so I gave out my blood in order to save them. My humanity was holy, and nothing did it inherit of the miseries of the first man. And although it was similar in natural features, it was untouchable by the slightest spot which could veil my sanctity. My only inheritance was the will of my Father, in which I was to carry out all of my human acts, to form in me the generation of the children of light. You see, I was allowed to form this generation in the very womb of the will of my celestial Father, and I spared no strains, nor acts, nor pains, nor prayers. On the contrary, it was at the top of all the things I did and suffered, in such a way that I conceived it in me, I fecundated it, and I formed it. They were the ones, the children of light, whom the Divine Father had entrusted to me with so much love. They were my favorite inheritance, which was given to me in the most holy supreme will. Now, after I have made known the goods of redemption and how I want everyone to be saved, giving to all the means which are needed, I move on to make known that there is another generation in me which I must deliver, my children who will live in the divine will, and that in my own heart I keep all the graces ready, all my interior acts done in the sphere of eternal will for them, waiting for the kiss of their acts, for their union, in order to give them the inheritance of the supreme will. Just as I received it, I want to give it to them, so that I may deliver the second generation of the children of light. If my humanity did not give this inheritance which it possessed, that is, the divine will, the soul, and only thing I loved and which gave me all that is good, my descent upon earth would have been incomplete, nor could I say that I have given everything. On the contrary, I would have reserved for me the greatest thing, the most noble and divine part. See, then, how necessary it is that my will be known in all of its relations, prodigies, effects, and value, what I did in this will for the creatures, and what they must do. This knowledge will be a powerful magnet in order to attract the creatures and make them receive the inheritance of my will, and so as to make the generation of the children of light enter the field, the children of my will. Be attentive, my daughter. You will be my spokesperson, the trumpet, to call them and gather this generation so favored and longed for by me. Then, after having withdrawn, he came back again, all afflicted in such a way as to move to pity. And as he threw himself into my arms as though to find rest, in seeing him I told him, "What is it, Jesus? Why so afflicted?" And Jesus, "Ah, my daughter, you know nothing of what they want to do. They want to wager on Rome. The foreigners and even the Italians want to wager on it. The evils they will do are so great, and so many that if the earth unleashed fire and burned it to ashes, it would be a lesser evil than what they will do. See, people pop out from everywhere to pour into it and storm it. And what is more is that they are clothed as lambs, while they are rapacious wolves wanting to devour the prey. What diabolical unions they clutch together to have more strength and to storm it. Pray, pray. This is the last precipice of these times into which the creature wants to hurl herself. October 27th, 1929, Volume 27. Why the kingdom of the divine will could not come before the coming of our Lord upon earth. The graft of Jesus Christ and the graft of Adam. I was doing my round in the creation, and I was following all the acts done by the divine Fiat, from Eden up to the descent of the divine word upon earth. But while I was doing this, I thought to myself, and why did the kingdom of the divine will not come upon earth before the Son of God came from heaven to earth? And my sweet Jesus, taking the occasion from what I was thinking, or rather it seems to me that when he wants to speak to me, he gives me the reflections. He makes doubts and difficulties arise in me, and the desire to know many things about his kingdom. While when he does not want to speak to me, my mind is silent. I am unable to reflect upon anything, and I go through the acts of the divine will within its light. So my lovable Jesus, coming out from within my interior, told me, "My daughter, the kingdom of my divine will could not come upon earth before my coming to it, because there was no humanity that possessed, as much as it is possible for a creature, the fullness of my divine Fiat. And not possessing it, there was no right, either according to the divine order or according to the human order. Heaven was closed. The two wills, human and divine, were as though scowling at each other. Man felt himself in the impossibility of asking for a good so great, so much so that he would not even think about it. By right of justice, God was in the impossibility of giving it. Before my coming upon earth, God and the creature were with each other like the earth and the sun. The earth does not possess the seed with which, by pulverizing it, it may form the shoot in order to form the plant of that seed. The sun, not finding the shoot, cannot communicate the effects it possesses so as to be able to form, with its vivifying virtue, the development and the formation of that plant. So earth and sun are as though foreign to each other. It can be said, if they had reason, that they would as though scowl at each other, for the earth cannot produce and receive that good, and the sun cannot give it. Such was the state of humanity without the seed of my Fiat, and if there is no seed, it is useless to hope for the plant. Now, with my coming upon earth, the divine word clothed himself with human flesh, and by this he formed the graft with the tree of humanity. My humanity lent itself as seed to the eternal word, and my divine will formed the new graft with my human will. From this, since I was the head of all human generations, began the right on both sides, human and divine, for them to be able to receive the kingdom of my divine will, for God to be able to give it. Now, when a graft is made, it does not immediately assimilate the strength of the new humors, but it keeps assimilating the new humors of that graft little by little. Therefore, at the very beginning, it gives few fruits, but as it keeps forming, the fruits increase. They are bigger and more tasty, until the whole tree is formed, loaded with branches and fruits. Such is the graft made by me with the tree of humanity. About 2,000 years have passed, and humanity has not received all the humors of my graft. But there is reason to hope, because the seed, the graft, is there, and therefore the creature can ask for it. God finds himself in the possibility of giving it, because there is my humanity that, possessing my divine will by nature, by virtue of the Word made flesh, has given back the rights to man and to God. Therefore, everything I did in redemption is nothing other than preparation, watering, cultivation, to give development to this celestial graft made by me between the two wills, the human and the divine. So how could the kingdom of my divine will come before my coming upon earth, if the graft was missing, as well as the principle of its life, its operating and act in the soul, and its first act in the act of the human work, in order to extend its kingdom in each of their acts? It is true that my divine fiat, with its power and immensity, extended its empire everywhere. But in the human will it was not present as principle of life, but only by power and immensity. It was in the condition in which sun and earth find themselves. The sun invests the earth with its light, and it also gives its effects. But the earth does not become sun, and the sun does not become earth, because sun and earth do not fuse together in such a way as to form life one within the other. And therefore they are always foreign bodies that do not look alike. And as much as the sun illuminates it, warms it, communicates its admirable effects, since it does not communicate its life, nor does the earth surrender its rights of life in the sun, the earth will always be earth, and the sun will always be sun. Such is the state my divine will was and is in. Until man surrenders his will and mine cannot cast its principle of life in the human will. The fusion of one with the other cannot take place. The creature will always be creature without the likeness and the life of her Creator in the depth of her soul, that only my divine fiat can form. Therefore there will always be dissimilarity, distance, even though my divine volition illuminates it and communicates to it its admirable effects out of its goodness and liberality, and by the effect of the power and immensity that it possesses by its own nature. More so since, by sinning, by doing his human will, Adam not only formed the woodworm in the root of the tree of humanity, but he added the graft to it, a graft that communicated all the bad humors that in the course of the centuries the graft of Adam would produce in the tree of humanity. At the beginning, a graft can produce neither great goods nor great evils, but only the beginning of evil or of good. In fact, Adam did not do the many evils of the human generations, but only made the graft, and was yet the cause of torrents of evils, more so since he did not have immediately the opposite graft of my coming upon earth, but centuries upon centuries were to pass. Therefore the bad humors kept growing and the evils multiplied, and so the kingdom of my will could not even be thought of. But when I came upon earth, with my conception I formed the opposite graft with the tree of humanity, and the evils began to stop, the bad humors to be destroyed. So there is all the hope that my kingdom of my divine will be formed in the midst of the human generations. The many truths I have manifested to you about my divine fiat are sips of life, some of which water, some cultivate, some increase the humors for the tree of humanity grafted by me. Therefore, if the life of my divine fiat has entered into the tree of my humanity and has formed the graft, there is all the reason to hope that my kingdom will have its scepter, its just dominion, and its command in the midst of creatures. Therefore pray and do not doubt. October 27th, 1935, Volume 33. How the Divine Will descends into the human act and creates its palpitating life in it. How it forestalls purgatory for one who lives in his will. I feel in me the power of the supreme volition, but so much that it wants that I undergo in my little acts the power of its divine act. But while it wants to be called by the creature. It does not want to be an intruder, nor to enter by force, but it wants that she know it. And the human volition, giving the kiss to the divine volition, cedes the place to its operation, and she places herself in cortege to the divine act, feeling herself honored that a divine volition has operated in her act. My mind lost itself, and oh, how many things it understood, but incapable of being able to repeat them with words. And my beloved Jesus, all goodness, told me, "My blessed daughter, you have not yet understood what my will operating in the human act of the creature means. It descends into the human act with its creative power, with its majesty, with its light, and with its luxury of innumerable graces. And pouring itself out again into the human act, it makes use of its power, and it creates its act in it. And the human act remains as material that it has made use of in order to create its act. And to create means that it creates as many acts for however many acts it wants to create. And sometimes it creates as many for however many creatures are disposed who can receive its act, in which are contained unheard of prodigies of grace, of light, of love. It contains the palpitating and creating life of a divine volition. This is the reason why, having to do an act so great, it does not want to do it if the creature does not know it, and she herself does not yearn and want it. She calls it to undergo in her act its creative will of a volition so holy and powerful. What difference, my daughter, between one who operates good, prays, because she feels the duty of doing it, or that necessity imposes itself, or else she suffers because she cannot free herself? For however good, they are always human acts without the virtue of multiplying themselves however much they want. They do not possess the fullness of goods, nor of sanctity, nor of love, and at times they are mixed with the most vile passions, because the creative strength of the one who creates good, and knows how to and can undo itself from everything that does not pertain to its sanctity, is lacking. In fact, the soul who lets my divine will operate in her act gives the field to the continuous creation. And oh, how it feels glorified, loved, because it can create what it wants in her act. It feels the sovereignty, its dominion, the royalty recognized, loved, and respected. Therefore the heavens are shaken, and everyone is attentive and in the act of profound adoration when they see my divine will creating in the act of the creature. Oh, if creatures would know what it means to live in my divine volition, they would compete to live in it, and it would be populated with children of my will. And since in mine the human will feels incapable of operating, it would do nothing other than undergo the continuity of acts of divine volition. And it is the continuation of acts of a good that forms the order, the harmony, the diversity of the beauties that forms the enchantment and the formation of the life of the good that one wants to acquire. Is not our own life perhaps continuous repetition? We always love. We repeat the conservation of the universe, and with this we maintain the order, the harmony, the life of the universe. Oh, if we did not always repeat even for an instant, one would see chaos in all things. Therefore, always in my will repeat your continuous little refrains, always undergoing my will in your acts, such that it would repeat in you its creating act, so it will be able to form not only the act, but the fullness of its life. After this, I thought about everything that regards the divine will, and I said to myself, is it possible that the creature can arrive at so much? And my sweet Jesus, repeating his say, told me, my daughter, you must know that no sooner does the creature truly decide to want to live in my divine will, and at whatever cost to never do her own, then my fiat, with an indescribable love, forms the seed of its life in the depth of the soul. This has such power, such sanctity, that it does not grow if it does not first place the soul in order, freeing her from her weaknesses, miseries, and stains, if there are any. One could say that it forms purgatory in advance, purging her from everything that could impede that a life of divine will would form in her, because my will and sins cannot exist, nor be together. At the most, some apparent weakness could be possible, that with its light and heat becomes immediately purified. It always has the purificative act in its hands, such that there cannot be one hindrance in the soul that could impede it, not only of growing, but of developing its acts in the acts of the creature. Therefore, the first thing that my will does is to remove purgatory beforehand, making it done in advance, in order to be freer to make her live in my will, and to form its life as it pleases it more. So if the creature were to die after one decided and wanted act of living in my volition, she will take flight toward heaven. Rather, my will itself will carry her in its arms of light as triumph, as its birth, and as its dear child. And if this could not be, one could not be able to say, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It would be a way of speaking, not a reality. Because it reigns in heaven, there are neither sins nor fear of purgatory. It knows how to get rid of everything, because it wants to be alone in its place, ruling and dominating. End of October 27th. Fiat.